Hi, we're here today with ClearTech Loop, on the move, in the know. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Joe Peterson. I am the Vice President of Cloud and Security for Clarify 360 and the Chief Analyst at ClearTech Research. And I've got an amazing special guest and long-term friend of mine, Mr. Mark Lynd. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Joe. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. In case you don't know him, and you should, he is head of executive advisory and strategy for Netsync. And Mark leverages his extensive experience in cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, data center, and IoT to provide strategic guidance for C-level interactions. In addition to his role at Netsync, he holds executive board roles, and the gentleman rocks the CISSP, ISSAP, and ISSMP. So in case you were looking for something to do in your free time, I don't think Mark has any free time. I'm fairly sure he doesn't. He's a girl dad too. So he's busy. He's busy. So let's get down to our questions.
Okay.
How can cybersecurity professionals leverage generative AI to break out traditional, sort of that tool and tech mindset and drive more innovative thinking and execution in their security programs?
Yeah, I really love this question because I spend a lot of time with C-level customers, and one of the things that they often do is, how do we approach it? And I'm like, look, you cannot approach this like you approached things you did before with IT and that. It's just, it's a completely different animal. And so some of the things that talk to them about is make AI a copilot layer. Think of it as a layer, right? Because if you look at what Microsoft's doing, if you look at what Cisco's doing, all these others, what they're doing is they're offering copilots for all of their products, right? Mm-hmm. And as part of that, so that's a great way to get some early wins, because they ask me, if your board's asking you, what's your AI strategy? How are you going to do this? If you're getting questions from your employees, leadership, customers, it's a great way to get in there thinking about this co-pilot layer to make your people more effective, more efficient, and start to augment them, because that's really what we're talking about, right? It's kind of the piece you see with Jensen, the CEO for NVIDIA. He says, you're not going to be replaced by AI. You're going to be replaced by somebody who's really good at AI. So, you think about that from a copilot layer, you can make your employees better at what they're doing, make them more effective, more efficient. And that's a good, solid early wins. Doesn't require huge investments and all that. And then, one of the things also is you've got to think about putting in a framework, right? How are we going to do this? So we can make better buying decisions, right? But this isn't about better controls like a lot of the previous products are. This is about better decisions, because this augments and enhances your decision for your employees, for you, for your peers, et cetera. And it has great benefit to your customers. So maybe an example, Joe, of that would be is hypothesis-driven threat hunting. So in the past, threat hunting, you had to dig through the details, right? And you may have a product that bubbles it up. A couple, maybe they look at 100,000 and they bubble up 10 or 15 for you to look at. Mm-hmm. But where we're going to is you'll be able to ask questions. Which one is the most, problematic for us? Which one might skirt around our security controls? Things like that, and then let it auto-materialize using these queries and levers. So you move from alert chasing to question asking. And and we talk about this with our customers all the time, because we sell a lot of security, do a lot of security for a lot of customers. So if you truly believe, and I do, that LLMs and generative AI and this predictive part of the AI is that piece, then that move from alert chasing to question asking is a really wonderful example on how this can really benefit, right? Because if you're more secure, that means your customer's data is more secure. If your people are able to work on other projects because you made them more efficient and effective, you're getting that. So those are some really good ones. And you also, then the last element of that is measure time to decision, not tool count. which directly goes against what you asked me, right? Before it was like, well, nobody ever got fired for buying Cisco, right? Or, we have 17 security products and and 5 integrations, et cetera. No, measure time to decision, right? Because a lot of times going and having to look at 6 or 7 consoles, trying to figure out what information is where, and then trying to make those align with each other so that you can make a good informed decision is so difficult. But with LLMs, you can look at a wide variety of data sets in a data lake, or even outside of that by loading it, or using a RAG. You can do that, and so now you can measure your time to decision, not how many tools I had to go to collect all this information and get all this. Even though there is a verification element of that some may appreciate, if you do it right in the LLM, you can get that as well.
I love that answer because it was so layered. And one of the things I heard you say is, we need to teach our newer security folks to ask better questions.
Yeah.
So we have to teach them to ask better questions, because we're going to, some CISO somewhere is buying some fancy tool and it expects you to ask it questions.
Well, it's funny. I do an AI tabletop, right? And when we do that for the C-suite, you have to put it in very measurable or simple terms, right? So I say, stop buying blinky boxes, start buying better questions. And that is an actual soundbite from or quote from the AI tabletop.
That's so good. That is so good, right? But it's a different way of thinking. And it is like the part of the different way of thinking is, you're an ex-military guy. Cybersecurity is very rule bound, right? If this, then that, right? AI doesn't behave that way.
No, it doesn't.
So it's a different way to look at, is rolling crazy ball in some instances, right? And you have to think differently to lock down those attack vectors.
To that point, you think about this, one of the ways to augment that and to do that and think that different way is like, if you're thinking about purple teams, right?
Yep.
So purple team loops. How about AI augmented purple team loops? So if you use LLM agents, and agentic AI is the big rage right now, right? But if you're able to do that to script, adversary behaviors like phishing lures, prompt injection strings, data poisoning, et cetera, so that every exercise hardens both systems and staff, right? And then maybe you anchor that to MITRE Atlas tactics to model how attackers target AI. That's a really great way, how you and I are talking about using questions and using it taking a different approach to an age-old problem.
Are you listening, venture capital people? You need to call this man because he's got a great idea here. Just call him.
Remember, purple team loops.
I love it. It's such a good idea, though, because you're using AI to outsmart itself.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it. You and I both spend a lot of time with customers, and one of the ones that we always hear is we need to do more with less. Right? I may not have the exact budget. I may not have the headcount. I may not be able to get great people, enough of them. Right? And you're always in this struggle where you're trying to get one or the other. So a way to do that is to truly take what the LLM provides you, this augmentation, right? And then, apply it to given problems. And that purple team loop, I've heard that issue. They didn't call it a loop, but I've heard it sounds like a circle to me. I hear it all the time. When you get down there with engineers, with their leadership, and you start to talk about, maybe it's an instant response tabletop, maybe you're talking about, purchasing a new product or tool or whatever it may be, and these questions come up, and I've heard the purple team one a bunch of times. I've still not seen anybody solve it.
That's a great one. It really is. And speaking about, sort of balancing things, how can organizations embed security and privacy controls into AI model development without slowing down innovation?
Yeah, I love this one too, because I have to kind of take a weird angle on this one. I always think, having been the CIO and CISO several times, and it was me on the line and my team. I like to give teams a fast paved road with guardrails. That's my angle, right? And what I mean by that is, governance that ships. Maybe so don't go out and try to create some governance on your own. There's so much out there, right? You got NIST, you have ISO, Microsoft has their own, Google has their own. I mean, just go down the list. I think there's 11 or 12 the last time I heard.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And if you're just purely Microsoft, and there's a lot of shops out there that do a lot of Microsoft or lean heavy on Microsoft, and maybe you want to get the early wins with O365 and their copilot. That's a reasonable strategy, right? Then you may want to adopt theirs, and then maybe position yourself towards NIST further down the path, right? As you start to expand and broaden your horizons around, generative AI, et cetera. And then, security by default. We're back to that. Security baked in is always better than bolted on. And we've been saying that for years, right? Well, security by default, think of it as a golden path with this LLM, right? You need to look at the model. You need to understand the data sets, the data lake. You and I've talked about DLP in the past, prompt injections. There's a lot of pieces to this. It isn't just simply, and that's why people are so fearful of shadow AI. It's not just simple, bring something up and start loading PDFs and asking questions and giving access to data that may or may not be sensitive. There's a lot of effort to that. So, in my mind, it's going to have to be done early. You're going to have a good AI strategy. You're going to have to ensure that it's based on some kind of governance and model that pre-exists. Don't try to build your own. I've seen too many customers go down that lane, and it's fraught with all kinds of potholes and damaging issues. And do that. And then last but not least, make sure that for your environment, when you give it access to your information, your data, and that you let the employees know and share with them, right? Bring them along for the ride, that sensitive information going in there will be trained on and will become public information more than likely.
Right. And we all have heard the horror stories about people not locking stuff down and the crown jewels getting into the public domain. And it's sad. So last question. How should the CISO be thinking about AI adoption in terms of its use to both secure emerging threats and then from an organizational governance perspective?
Yeah, this is one that I think about this in kind of an interesting way. It's really, I got to give all the credit to the customer, and it's a variation of what we just talked about. It's move fast on a paved, well-lit road, right? If you're going to look at some kind of analogy to think about this, is don't go off on your own trying to figure this out. To really think about what you're trying to do, bring others in. You might want to bring third parties in that have done this for others to help them with that. And some of the things you can think about, from a CISO perspective, SOC augmentation. That's a big win, a really big win, right? Use LLMs to summarize alerts, enrich your ICOs, generate IR drafts, but keep the human in the loop. That's the big thing now. We're hearing that from a lot of even the AI manufacturers themselves are saying, keep the human in the loop. We're hearing that over and over and over again. And then, another good one is AI threat modeling. We kind of touched on that. It kind of aligns with MITRE Atlas, with NIST AI 100-2, some of those. And then as we move into the future, think about it as deep fakes and fraud resilience, right? Is resilience. You've got to create a way to battle what AI is going to be bringing at you. I don't know what you're hearing from your customers, but I'm hearing a lot of fear in certain customers because they're starting to see these AI-driven and empowered attacks happen, and they don't have the personnel, they don't have the cadence, and they don't have the determination and capabilities to offset that right now. So they're leaning on some of their manufacturers, they're leaning on their partners, and it's really, you're going to have to make investments. You're going to have to invest in your team. You're going to have to invest in your organization. You're going to have to invest in yourself, and you've really got to come up with kind of this a way to treat AI as both a control surface and a risk surface, right?
That's really good. I love that way of thinking. Control service and a risk service, because it is.
It
It's
is.
both. It's
It
both.
is. The only difference is the blast radius could be infinitely larger.
True.
Nuclear potentially. I mean, it is. It's like in my new book that I have, I that's what I covered. It's AI. It's AI powered cyber threats, and that's what people truly fear. And there's a reason to fear it, but it's not uncapped. It's just you're going to have to make those investments. You're going to have to learn how to augment yourself, your team, your organization with AI, and use it to manage both that control surface and that risk surface.
Love that. And what is the name of your new book, and where can people find it?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's called Cyber War, One Scenario, and it's kind of a mix of Annie Jacobson, who's a very famous author who I love, who did Nuclear War and Area 51, and she does narrative nonfiction and fiction in the form of Tom Clancy. So if you smash those two together, and some of the early reviews have even commented on that, it's a narrative fiction, and it's about a cyber attack that's AI powered, that leads towards impacting our critical infrastructure, both here and abroad, and then turns and starts hitting everybody. And they have to join together to do that. And it was fun writing it. It's a long read, it's like 307 pages, but a lot of research went into it, and a lot of good customer information went into it.
Wow, that sounds cool. I'm going to need to check that out. So you'll have to send me the link so I can add it in the podcast notes when we post the podcast.
Yeah, it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Kodo, Apple Books. I think it's on like 93 platforms.
93?
Yeah, believe it or not, there's over 300 platforms. Who would have thought?
These so many things I don't know, just so many. It's just a lot. Well, it was a pleasure seeing your face. It was a pleasure hearing your thoughts. Thank you so much for making time out of your day to visit. And thank you guys all for joining. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Jeff.